It was a splendid picnic, but I wasn't having any fun. Every year, the head of our company hosted a grand gathering at his estate, with abundant food, drinks, and entertainment for the kids. The guys I worked with would huddle at one table, while the wives congregated at another. For some reason, I just wasn't in the party spirit. My name is Jack Benson, and I've been with the same company for 10 years. I married my wife, Emily, right out of college. It was a typical romance, and getting married felt natural. I wanted to have many children, but Emily didn't want to be a mother. I thought everything was fine in our relationship until a few weeks ago when I started noticing signs. At first, I thought I was imagining things and tried to ignore it. But the little things that bothered me wouldn't go away, and eventually, I decided I had to confront her infidelity. It seemed like Wednesday was the day to test my suspicions. I went to work that morning as usual, but before I left, I placed a GPS tracker in the back of Emily's car. I turned off the automatic shutdown and inserted fresh batteries, which should have lasted at least 14 hours. Work went on as usual, except I left a few hours early and swung by the house. Her car was in the driveway, so I parked on the next street over, went back in, and retrieved the GPS. It was working perfectly. She came out of the house, and I could see exactly where she was headed. I set the unit on the center console and embarked on a treasure hunt. About 20 minutes later, I found myself in the parking lot of the airport Holiday Inn. The guy at the hotel desk seemed friendly enough, and I mentioned that my wife had been there earlier for a business meeting and had left a pair of expensive sunglasses in the room. I asked if he could check the lost and found, but I didn't know the room number. Without hesitation, I gave her name and asked what room she had rented. He looked at me curiously and smiled slightly. When he checked the computer, he said she had room 417 and checked out around 2 p.m. The room hadn't been cleaned yet, but I could check with the maid who handles that floor. I thanked him with a 20 and went in search of the maid. The maid was as accommodating as the desk clerk, and another 20 helped me get in without a problem. There was nothing of interest in the room except dirty sheets, wet towels, and 3 used condoms in the trash can. I tucked the condoms into one of the plastic bags and went down to the lobby. I was glad the clerk appeared friendly and decided to give it another shot. I held out a bill across the counter and asked if I could get a copy of the security footage on this floor. He wouldn't make a copy. He just handed me the original and inserted a new tape into the recorder. I thanked him, he smiled knowingly, and I headed home. At home, everything was fine. I didn't say anything, and Emily didn't give any sign that something was amiss. I was tempted to inquire, but I decided to refrain. I wasn't ready to bow my head yet. Mentally, I planned my next move. After Emily left, I quietly reviewed the security footage and now knew who the guy was. Before I went to bed, I checked the credit card files in the den. There were no MasterCard bills for the last 3 months. Emily usually paid the house bills and then destroyed the bills after the MasterCard payment, so I had no record of room rentals. The next day, I went to work as usual. Emily's newfound interest was David Clark, a mid-level manager at the company who seemed like a pretty normal guy. I was able to find his personnel files and soon knew everything there was to know about him. I didn't know how or where they met, nor did I care. I just wanted to get it over with. David was married and had 2 young children. His wife, Rachel, was short with dark hair. She was a little overweight but had a good figure. I had seen her at several company events and found her attractive, although she didn't look like a beauty queen. Sarah, my secretary, was somewhat suspicious of my inquiries and with a cheeky grin offered me any help I might need. It's hard to keep secrets from good secretaries. I asked her to see if she could get copies of my wife's MasterCard bills and her cell phone call log for the past 3 months. I got the feeling that everyone in the company knew what was going on except me. Later that day, I found a business card for a divorce attorney on my desk. I don't know where it came from, but I put it in my pocket for the future. Things were normal at home that evening. I mentioned the company picnic on Saturday, and Emily said she was looking forward to it. We went to bed at different times as usual, and there was no sex as usual. Friday was a slow day at work. The highlight of the day was when Sarah produced the MasterCard records and Emily's call log. She also had a copy of David's call log. I never mentioned his name to her. I felt like a cuckold before the end of the workday. Sarah sat down with me and told me that I should try to talk to Rachel at the picnic if possible, and also try to talk to Jake, the CEO of the company. She winked as if to say that everything would be fine. That evening, I sat and watched TV alone while Emily read a book. The wheels were turning. It was time to do something. So here we are, back at the picnic. Beer was flowing freely, and everyone but me was having a great time. Sam, a close friend from work, started teasing me about not liking parties. I tried to laugh, but to no avail. "I hope you're in a better mood at next year's picnic, Jack," Sam grumbled. "I don't think I'll be at next year's picnic, Sam." That got everyone's attention. "What's going on, Jack? Are you leaving the company?" he asked. "No, I think I'll be in jail next year at this time." At this, there were gasps and giggles. Everyone at the table simultaneously demanded an explanation. They couldn't tell if I was joking or being serious, but they all waited for an answer. "Well, Sam, someone in the company had an affair with my wife, and very soon I intend to kill him, his wife, and his children. I'm not going to put up with that." There was silence at the table. David sat at the far end. I avoided looking directly at him, but I could tell he was anxious. Suddenly, Tom cut in. "Well, in that case, Jack, can I borrow your boat?" This elicited a laugh from most people and took the tension out of the conversation. "Tom, the boat is worth over $10,000, and you can have it for $4,000. After a short pause, Tom said, "If you're serious, Jack, it's a deal." "Great, I'll get her cleaned up, and you can pick her up tomorrow around noon. Dan, if you still need those ping golf clubs, you can have them for $100, okay?" Dan nodded and said he would pick them up on Sunday. About that time, David got up from the table and walked toward the yard. Behind a bush, I saw him pull out his cell phone and hit speed dial. At the same time, on the other side of the yard, Emily was rummaging through her purse, looking for her cell phone. They talked for a few minutes, and then Emily saw me looking in her direction and quickly hung up. By the time David returned to the table, I had sold my truck to the delivery guy too. It was turning out to be a pretty good picnic. I was about to call it a day so as not to spoil the mood when I remembered Sarah's words. I walked over to Jake, who was busy with several large guests. I decided I didn't want to get in the way and turned to leave. Jake took my hand, leaned over, and said, "Don't worry, I've got your back." I wasn't sure what he meant, but it sounded good. As I walked over to tell Emily I was leaving, Rachel and the two little ones kind of bumped into me. Before I could say anything, she spoke softly. "We need to talk. I'll call you." "Don't call me." I told Emily I was leaving. She could have stayed and given someone else a ride or come with me. She left with me. We didn't talk on the way home or after we got there. I felt very satisfied. The next day, I got up bright and early, feeling confident. I got the golf clubs out and cleaned them a bit for Dan. He had gotten a good deal and knew it. I washed the car, gave it a quick wax, and vacuumed it. I didn't need to do that, but it helped take my mind off the problems. The boat was a serious project, so I saved it for last. I figured I could spend the whole morning getting everything in order for Tom. While I was outside taking care of business, I watched Emily firing up the phone lines. I'm sure she and David had a lot to discuss. I regretted not figuring out a way to record phone conversations, but then decided it didn't matter anyway. Dan picked up the clubs, and I went inside, made a sandwich, and got a beer. I spent over an hour with Tom explaining the wiring and fuel system of the boat and loading him up with all the accessories. I made him take all my fishing gear as well. Heck, I wasn't going to need fishing accessories without the boat. It was going to be a busy day. After a quick shower, I got dressed and asked Emily if she wanted to go get something to eat. She declined and made no excuses. I found it interesting that she never once asked about the boat, the truck, or the golf clubs. I got the feeling that she was trying to avoid the subject. I was fine with that. I had a great dinner, went to a local brew pub, and relaxed for the rest of the night. Emily was already asleep when I got home and was still in bed when I left for work in the morning. On my way to work, I stopped by the International House of Pancakes. I didn't usually do this, but now I was feeling invigorated. I took my time, read the paper, and got to work around 10 in the morning. Everyone was overly friendly and smiling more than usual. Sarah, kind of giggling, brought me coffee that I didn't need. "What the hell is going on?" I asked. "Well, you're considered a celebrity of sorts today. Your performance at the picnic went viral, and that's a good thing," Sarah smiled. "David came in early this morning and asked for an immediate transfer. He offered no explanation, but Mr. Williamson had already notified the staff that if he came in, he'd be transferred to the Baltimore office immediately. David cleaned out his desk and was gone within the hour. Hell, I didn't think I was that convincing, but it's even funny. Everyone said he looked like a scared rabbit," said Sarah. "Did he take his wife and kids with him?" I asked. "No, he sent them to her folks in Maine from what I understand. She was a little pissed off about the whole thing. She said she'd call me and said it was very important. I don't know what to do now. I guess I'll just wait." Things were quiet and cold at home. We talked only out of necessity. Emily never struck up a conversation about what was going on, and neither did I. It was like we were both bending over backward to avoid the subject. I never went to bed that night, just fell asleep on the couch. The next day, I started closing credit cards and bank accounts. I did my best to separate my and her financial accounts. I left her with one credit card that she had opened in her name only. I got $1,000 in cash and put it in an envelope to give to her when the time came. The checking account and ATM were closed. The Beamer car was in her name, but the insurance was in mine. I canceled the insurance. She had a cell phone, so there was nothing to do. Just before lunch, Rachel called. I met Rachel and the kids at a nearby McDonald's. It was her choice, and it was a good one for the kids. She was furious because David insisted she'd go to Maine to see her parents and gave her no explanation. Monday morning, she called David's secretary and found out about his transfer. Somehow it turned out that I had threatened to kill David, her, and the kids, and David had forced her to go to Maine to protect her. Rachel decided that was too much and packed her bags and came home. She asked me if I was going to kill her, and we both giggled. Then the conversation turned serious. "We both know what's going on," she said. "I want to know what hard evidence you can share, and I'll tell you what I have." "Okay," I smiled sincerely at her. "I have 3 months of phone records on Emily and David's cell phones. I also have credit card records of the rooms they rented at the airport Holiday Inn. I have a videotape of them going in and out of the room with a time and date, and I have 3 used condoms. Your turn." She looked pleased. "I can offer voice recordings of some very vivid conversations, and I have about 40 good pictures of the two of them doing what they do best. Don't ask me how I got them. I also have an excellent attorney who is willing to handle both cases together if you agree. I left her business card on your desk, but you haven't called her yet." I took the business card out of my pocket and placed it on the desk. She smiled again. I really liked having kids around, and being with Rachel was fun, even under these circumstances. We sat for a while longer until the kids got tired of playing, and then we went our separate ways. I agreed to meet with a lawyer on the condition that she be there too. After lunch, she brought an envelope to the office with copies of her paperwork, and I gave her copies of everything I had. We arranged to meet with the attorney the next morning. The evening at home passed without incident as usual. The lawyer was good. She had checklists and worksheets for everything. It didn't look like we were going to have any problems with the divorce or settlement. I asked Rachel if she wanted to have dinner that night, and she agreed if she could find a babysitter for the kids. I had no objection to their presence, but it was her choice. Emily didn't say anything as I got dressed for the date. I didn't bother to explain anything and just walked out the door. The evening went great. We talked about everything except the divorce. She was fun to be with. I brought her home early and couldn't resist giving her a peck on the cheek at the door. When I got home, Emily was already in bed. I spent the next day finishing up all the work I'd neglected at the office. Sarah was doing a great job covering for me, but things still needed to be done. In the evening, it was time to wrap things up. After dinner, I cleared the kitchen table. Roman II laid out the newspapers and started cleaning my old .45 caliber army pistol. Emily watched this for a while and then came over to the table. "What the hell are you doing?" she barked. Without looking up, I replied, "I have unfinished business in Baltimore." "What do you mean, unfinished business?" "It's personal." She paced back and forth for a few seconds. "I don't want you to go. You're going to do something stupid, and I think you should think about it." "I'm sorry, I have to do this. Are you afraid I'll end up in jail or something?" She leaned over the table. Her lower lip trembled with anger. "I don't care what happens to you, just don't hurt him. You hear me? Don't hurt him." I just sat there, staring at her. Now I was sure I was doing the right thing. She sat up and leaned toward me aggressively. "I don't know what you think is going on that makes you act so nasty, but I suggest you stop it. People say you think I'm cheating on you. You have no reason to think there's anything going on, so stop acting like a jerk." I pushed the gun aside, pulled my briefcase to me, and opened it. "Here are your cell phone records for the last 3 months. Want to guess how many calls you made to him during that time? And this is a copy of his calls. Guess how many calls a day he made to you." She leaned back a little. "Cell phone calls don't mean anything." I placed the tape in front of her. "Here are some intimate phone conversations the two of you had. Would you like to listen to them, or do you already know what's on them?" No response. I put the credit card records down. "You even paid for hotel rooms. Wow, that's nice of him. 14 hotel rooms in 3 months. I'm impressed. Did his wife know about this?" She seemed to have lost a little of her swagger, but seemed to be growing increasingly angry with me. I slid the VCR tape toward her. "Here's a video of you and him going into a motel room and coming out 3 hours later, complete with time and date. To top it off, I have 40 beautiful pictures of the two of you trying every possible sex position without undressing." I spread the pictures out on the table so she could make sure I wasn't lying. She looked at the pictures. After a pause, she said, Okay, stop it. You're confusing me. I can't think straight when you attack me like this." There was no remorse in her words. There was no regret. There was no fear. The only emotion that still showed was anger. I put everything in my briefcase, including the gun. She sat silent, unmoving. I grabbed my coat and headed for the door. "I'm going to a motel for the night. When I get back, I expect you and all your belongings to be gone. If you have anything left, I'll send it to you. Your Discover card is still valid, but your other credit cards have been canceled. Here's $11,000 in cash. I suggest you use some of it for your car insurance. If you're gone when I get back, I won't have to go to Baltimore. I don't want to see you in or near this house again. Do you understand?" I put the envelope with the money on the table. "Where the hell am I supposed to go?" she shouted. "Baltimore is nice this time of year," I hummed, walking away. The next day, Rachel and I had lunch. This time, I insisted she bring the kids with her. It made me feel good to have them around, even though they weren't mine. I told her about the events of the night before. She tried not to judge me, but given the situation and her involvement, it was difficult. After dinner, I stopped by the house to make sure Emily was gone. She had done a good job and left everything neat and clean. It was hard to tell she even lived here. Later, I called the landlord from work and told him I would be moving out at the end of the month. Everything was fine. I didn't need a big house all by myself. I started looking for apartments in the newspapers. When I got to work the next day, Sarah told me that Emily had moved in with David. I didn't bother to ask how she knew that, but I was curious. Later, the lawyer called to tell me that the divorce papers were ready and would be delivered together Saturday morning by messenger. The divorce would be final in 90 days, and she expected no problems. Placing the folder from the travel agency in front of me, Sarah informed me that I was instructed to take a 10-day vacation. It contained 4 airline tickets to Orlando, a week's stay at the Park Hotel, and park tickets for the entire week. All of this was on the order of Jake Williamson. 3 months later, the divorce was final. I moved in with Rachel, and life was wonderful. A week later, David was released. He was paying alimony, child support, car payments, and had no job. Emily, meanwhile, went to work. Someone took her Beamer for a ride and wrecked it. She had no insurance. Shortly after that, David left to get a job in Dallas and forgot to tell Emily where it was. Good luck to both of them. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the story, like and subscribe. Email your story to us and become part of our community. For more stories, check out the next video on our channel. Take care.